What's going on, my beautiful people? Welcome on into yet another edition of the Mafia Huddle, hosted by yours truly, Carl Jones. I got a special guest for y'all on tap today. My dog, Colin Richey. Dan, bring him up on the screen right now. Can we talk about my dog real quick? He wears many hats. He's helped out with Cover One, Sal Capaccio, shout out to WGR 550. My brother is a senior at Canisius University, and he thinks he knows a little something about the Buffalo Bills. Colin, thank you so much for joining the show today. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Carl. Appreciate it.
Man, let's get right into it, man. This offseason has been eventful for the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, they lose their head coach. They bring in their old offensive coordinator to be the head man in charge. Brandon Beane gets a promotion. Terry Pegula makes national news for something that, quite frankly, none of us could have ever expected. But let's start with the player personnel side of things, the splash move that they made this offseason. Bringing in DJ Moore, former Bears wide receiver. They went and traded a second-round pick and then got a fifth in return for the star wide receiver from the Chicago Bears. Let's break this down for a second here. When you initially heard the news, were you excited? What did you make of the move?
Yeah, well, when I initially heard the news, it was Ian Rappaport saying mid-round pick for DJ Moore. And so I'm thinking, okay, third, fourth, fifth, like in that range somewhere. We don't know if there's any salary retention from the Bears because Moore had that $24.5 million cap hit he was coming over with. And then the trade details finally come out, and it's a second-round pick for DJ Moore. And so my initial reaction is, ooh, that's a little rich for a receiver that's turning 29, maybe a little bit past his prime, hasn't had a 1,000-yard season in a couple years. But the more I've sat with it, and the more you see other receivers and the trades that they're getting, the price that they're commanding, the reports for A.J. Brown, the Eagles wanting at least a first-round pick and then some, I think this is about as fair of a trade as you are going to get for a guy with the production that Moore has.
Listen, JSN just got paid. Jackson Smith-Njigba, the Seahawks wide receiver, for those who don't know his initials. He just got paid a GDP of like a small island, I think, last week, $42 million a year, if I'm not mistaken, the richest contract in NFL history. So, yes, I was right with you when I saw the initial price tag. I'm like, ooh, DJ, he getting close to that 30 cliff. I don't know if I like that number. But like my man said in The Wire, the price of the brick going up, and these receivers are getting more expensive every single year. What do you make of him as the player, though? Because obviously, once we get to training camp, no one's going to care how much he's making. They just want to see who he is as a player on the field. What do you make of DJ Moore's fit as a player with the Buffalo Bills?
Yeah, well, I like that we have the proof of concept of him in a Joe Brady offense already, back with his time in Carolina. You're obviously getting a guy that is skilled on the boundary. He can create separation. He's a good route runner, and he comes up in big moments. The Bills are going to be a team that is going to be competing in the playoffs for a Super Bowl run like they have been every year, and you need those guys that are going to be able to come up in big moments and make the catches, like the Brandon Cooks catch to interception against Denver. Is that a catch DJ Moore maybe makes in the playoffs? Because we've seen him make those type of plays with just the Bears last season and those game enders against Green Bay with Caleb Williams throwing him the ball. So that's what I look for when I'm looking for the Bills trying to find their final piece of the offense is who's going to come up in that big moment and make the play. Stephon Diggs disappeared every single year in the playoffs with the Bills, had that drop against Kansas City that everyone remembers him for. In the 13 seconds game when the offense was doing everything, all he had was a 2-point conversion in that game. It was all Gabriel Davis. So who's going to make that play in the playoffs? I think that could be DJ Moore.
I've talked about this the last 2 years ever since Stephon Diggs departed. Listen, Jamar Chase would be nice. But I think if you can get a receiver who, in my opinion, is above the 20th best in the NFL. So for me, I've coined this term, the Cortland Sutton line.
Yeah.
Are you better than Cortland Sutton? If DJ Moore is, their trade is a resounding win for the Buffalo Bills. I don't need Jamar Chase, although that would be nice to see him playing in Buffalo. But let's go to the sexier side of the ball, the side of the ball that everyone, all the fans are caring about, the defense. I am kidding everyone. For those who don't know, I play football. I played Division I football, and I was a DB. So that's the side of the ball that matters on this podcast. Some of the moves that the Bills made, not necessarily as sexy or splashy in terms of the compensation they gave up to go get those guys, but they did replace Taron Johnson, who, listen, a fan favorite for so many years here in Buffalo, sent him packing to Las Vegas for, I believe, a 7th-round pick, and brought in D. Alford, former Atlanta Falcons nickel cornerback. What do you make of that move?
Yeah, well, Johnson, obviously, like you said, fan favorite. He's been in Buffalo for his entire career, but it was clear that he had lost a step in the coverage side, and the Bills, with this Jim Leonard transition to a 3-4 scheme, were looking for something different in the slot. And so you bring in a guy like Alford that has that experience in the nickel. I think it's a good move. You're getting younger at that position. You're getting higher upside in coverage at that position as well. As a former DB, what are you thinking of that move, replacing Johnson with Alford?
Yeah, to make this as simple as possible for the people at home, I would say think of Taron Johnson at this point in his career as someone who majored in nickel. He was really good in that slot. and can slide in to be that inside backer at times because he was physical enough to do so. But he necessarily didn't have the foot speed to be the outside cornerback. I think D. Alford's the exact opposite. He majors in nickel at that slot position, but then he can also step outside if you need him to do that. He will never be in the inside as a linebacker. So I think with Jim Leonard, that's clearly the vision they're going for. They didn't need a Taron Johnson who's willing to take on pulling guards and fullbacks like he did. That's not D. Alford's game. So I think he's looking for that versatility in terms of the type of archetype he wants out of that position. Now, another player that they brought in who, listen, there are so many adjectives that we can use to describe this good brother, C.J. Gardner-Johnson. I want your initial reaction when you heard, hey, Buffalo Bills are signing C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Colin, what was your reaction to that?
Yeah, well, he's a bit of an asshole on defense. He gets under players' skins. Sometimes on his own team, he gets under players' skins. He's bounced around. He's been on 6 teams in the last 7 seasons. But he's also young. He's only 28 years old. And I think just because he's moved around a lot, people think he's older than he actually is. But this dude's a baller. He's always around the football, creating plays, generating turnovers. If you can keep his personality in check a little bit and just make sure there's no problems off the field and in the locker room, I think this is a great addition to pair with Cole Bishop. And you want to talk about versatility, like with D. Alford, this guy can play in the post, up in free safety, in the box, down strong safety. He's played in the slot at the nickel before as well. So I'm really curious to see how Jim Leonard and this Bills defense is going to utilize a player that can really go in so many different spots in the secondary.
I want to touch on C.J. Gardner-Johnson, the person. I want to make this clear. I have had very minimal conversations with C.J. Gardner-Johnson in my life. The reason I frame it that way instead of 0, I actually had the honor of playing him in high school. And let me tell y'all that experience. His team is, I think, Cocoa, Florida, whatever. They come up to Ohio to come play us in like October. It was cold, rainy, yada, yada, yada. They bust lands, and I hear noise. It's him. Whatever, cool. Warm-ups. We're putting our pads and helmets on. I hear his voice. Oh, okay, cool. He's just talking. He's excited. The game starts. He's talking. Okay, cool. That brother talked the whole day. He talked the whole day, and I think that's the type of energy that he brings. He is unapologetically himself. Sometimes that wear people's thin. Quite frankly, that doesn't wear everyone thin. But hey, if you're the Buffalo Bills, I don't need you for 10 years. Can you ball this year? Can you lead us to where we want to go this year? And I think that's how I view it. If it doesn't work out, cool. It's a 1-year deal. It's not going to be that big of a dead cap hit. But I love that. I'm not going to say the Bills were a bunch of choir boys. I got way too much respect for those boys. But they need some edge, a little bit of nasty, a little bit of dog, a little bit of someone who's teetering that line between, yo, that's a flag to I need you on my team. And I think CJ can bring that.
Yeah, and I know there are people concerned about, like the Bills' culture, like in the locker room, like is this going to jeopardize that? I think if there's one player that has the ability to break down your entire team culture, then you didn't really have that culture to begin with.
Colin, you preaching on this beautiful Monday, and that's why we brought you here on the Mafia Huddle today. Staying on the defensive side of the ball, I think if I were to tell you the 2 biggest improvements that the Bills need from last season, wide receiver would be one, and then their pass rush would probably be the other. The Bills addressed that in some way, bringing in Bradley Chubb, the former Dolphins pass rusher. He's actually been sort of tied to Bills fandom for the better part of like 8 years or so because he was picked 2 selections ahead of Josh Allen, and John Elway infamously said, yeah, I probably should have picked that Josh Allen guy instead of Bradley Chubb. But that's neither here nor there. What do you make of the Bills bringing in Bradley Chubb?
Yeah, so the injury history is obviously a bit concerning, but he's almost 2 full seasons now removed from that torn ACL that he had in 2024, and then had 8.5 sacks last year playing all 17 games. So he has a clean slate of health, 2 seasons over double-digit sacks. I think this is the experienced edge rusher that we see the Bills bring in every couple years, whether it was Leonard Floyd or Von Miller or Joey Bosa. Bradley Chubb's just the latest edition of those, but still only 29, hasn't turned 30 yet. So maybe the younger side of those experienced pass rushers. I like the fit, the addition to the room. I think pairing him with Greg Rousseau in this new 3-4 scheme where they're both going to be considered outside linebackers, it's something he has a lot of experience in, both with Denver and Miami. And I think this is exactly the addition the Bills needed for their pass rush, like you were saying, that we needed to see improve.
I'm happy you phrased his injury history in the terms of he's 2 years removed. Because some people are going to point to the fact that, he's similar to Joey Bosa with the injury history. I think, yes, they both had injuries in their career, but they're 2 separate things. Joey Bosa has always had nagging injuries where like there'd be something that would permeate through an entire season, but he would play through it, or he wouldn't play through it, and it would just be a groin or a wrist or things of that nature. Bradley Chubb just gets catastrophic injuries and knocks him out for the whole year. But when he's healthy, there's nothing nagging about him. He's able to be a productive player. So as long as, and I'm knocking on wood, people, so don't worry about me trying to jinx anything. As long as he doesn't blow out the 3-letter word or anything of things of that nature, he should be a productive player on the field because that's who he's been time in and time out from his tenure in Denver as well as Miami. I'm going to wrap this show up today with a little question for both of us because that's what we do here in the Mafia Huddle. We get funky and freaky. I'm going to pop it off with you first. And maybe we have the same question. I don't know. It's not like the Bills had a lot of sexy free agents depart. The Bills had a lot of players leave, whether it is defensively, a couple guys on offense, most notably Brandon Cooks. If there is one player that you're like, man, I would really be eager to bring them back, who would it be?
So my mind immediately goes to one of the linebackers that's staying out there, whether it's Shaq Thompson or Matt Milano. The Bills are really
not AJ Klein, huh? Not
AJ Klein. I don't need Balin Spector back. Matt Milano or Shaq Thompson. Both of them played very well despite their age last year. Thompson coming in as a street free agent and immediately fitting into the Bills defense and taking over as a leader and great to fill in for both Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano, who dealt with injuries last year. And Milano obviously has been plagued by injuries throughout his career. But when he was fully healthy, was playing just as well as he was when he was an All-Pro a couple years ago. And if you look at the Bills' depth chart right now, they're thin at linebacker. It's Terrell Bernard and Dorian Williams, and then suddenly you're down to Joe Andreessen and Jimmy Charlo and Keontae Jenkins. So I would love to see the Bills add a veteran before the draft so that they don't go in with that glaring of a need, and that forces them to pick someone early, like a Jacob Rodriguez at 26 or something like that. So I would love to see either Milano or Thompson back. I don't know if I stole your answer there.
No, you didn't steal my answer because that's the answer. Shout out to, listen, I don't know what Colin says on his other platforms, but don't let him lie to y'all. He loves defense. He's a defensive guy at heart. He loves defense, and he thinks that's the sexier side of the ball. I'm right with you, though. I think that you can say what you want about Brandon Beane and his philosophy and how he builds teams. The one thing that I do give him credit for most years, I think last year may be the exception, he goes with the contingent. He likes to have all of his needs filled every single year. He doesn't want to have any glaring holes heading into any given draft because, like you mentioned, you're pigeonholed. We're like, hey, if I have a glaring hole at linebacker, well, I don't have a second-round pick. I got to take this guy in round one. And I think that if you bring in a Shaq Thompson, that gives you a stability to where you feel like, okay, I'm not going to chase my board in round one at 26. I'm not going to have to reach for a guy that necessarily isn't there. Because once Sonny Styles is off the board, it's a fat gap between the linebackers you want to take in round one. So I would love Shaq Thompson. I think he sets a nice floor. The ceiling is what it is at this point in his career. But I think that, listen, if you draft a guy in round 4 and you roll into a quartet of a rookie, Dorian, Shaq, and TB, I think I will feel solid with that group. Anything you'd like to add on that?
Yeah, so given that philosophy that Beane has to fill all those holes, at least with a safe floor before the draft, if we don't see a move like that in the coming weeks and then suddenly it's April 23rd, does that tell you that the team is more confident in Dorian Williams than maybe the rest of the fan base is letting on?
I think there's some merit to that. I think that, listen, there's a new fresh set of eyes that the entire staff basically is turned over, where they evaluated these guys, they've watched all the tape, they watched all the film, they sat down with these good brothers. And I think that, listen, here in Western New York, we have our opinions on Dorian Williams, but that was also a completely different coaching staff and a completely different system. So maybe they view Dorian Williams as the exact archetype to maybe fill that need going forward. They didn't, but here's the thing, though. Everyone says that they like a certain player until the Bullets get to fly on September 1st or whenever the first game is. So I think that you should always accumulate as much assets in a room as possible because everyone likes everyone in shorts. Everyone likes everyone when we're wearing polos and we're talking to each other off the camera. Of course I'm going to sound good and playing. Of course I'm going to sound good as a football player in March. Shoot, I ain't hitting nobody. It's a little different when the Bullets get to flying. Colin, I want to thank you so much for hopping on the Mafia Huddle today, man. You were excellent. Your analysis, I'm definitely stealing a couple of your thoughts. Don't tell nobody I said that. Where can the good people find your work if they want to reach out and see anything you're doing?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at Colin Richey.
I'm going to tell Elon you said Twitter, by the way. I'm going to tell Elon.
Colin Richey _NFL. You can find some of my work. I'm doing work with Cover One, the Cover One Buffalo podcast, and Turf to Tape, producing for Sal Capaccio for Sal's House, writing on Buffalo Bills on Sports Illustrated as well. So yeah, just making my way around, wearing many different hats, as you were saying in the beginning of the show. Yeah, hope you check out my work.
Listen, y'all going to be able to check out his work real soon because it sounds like he about to take my job. Me and him will have to talk about this afterwards. Colin, thank you so much for joining us. And we will see you guys at the crib. Make sure that y'all enjoy this sun outside. Please enjoy this sun. Y'all know Buffalo be tricky. Today it'll be sunny. Tomorrow it's going to be snowing. So make sure y'all go outside on this beautiful Monday. Thank you guys for watching and tuning in, and we'll see you next time.